All right. Okay, let me just adjust a couple settings. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks so much for joining us in our global symposium on inclusive AI. I'm Sophia. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of OpenNLP and an incoming freshman at Stanford, and I'll be your host for today. So before we get started, a couple notes on Zoom etiquette. To the audience, please make sure to remain on mute during presentations and the panel session. There will be a lot of time for brief Q&A sessions during all events, so you can feel free to unmute and type in the chat during that time. Moving on to our symposium agenda, we're going to start off with a couple of introductions on OpenNLP, our wonderful mentors, and we'll move on to our speaker panel event before concluding with all of our project presentations. So a bit of an introduction about OpenNLP. Who are we really? We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're a student-led grassroots movement and research lab for ethical AI. So as the field of AI is growing tremendously, we find it to be increasingly important to push for inclusion, ethics, and responsibility in AI development, which is one of the reasons why we're hosting this very symposium. Our mission as an organization is to connect students to mentors at research labs and startups that share our mission to develop technology that can make a real world impact. And in doing so, we hope to first and foremost provide accessible educational opportunities for students who are interested in AI. And second of all, lay a foundation for future generations of AI developers and technological leaders. In this symposium, you'll be hearing from mentors from members of our winter cohort, which started earlier this year around mid-February. So first, we'd like to warmly introduce our mentors for this cohort. Simran Kanuja, who is mentoring our long-term collaborative project with Carnegie Mellon University, Cleo Norris, who led our project with the company Earsight, and Merve, the CEO of the startup Yekola and advisor to our project with them as well. We're very grateful to these mentors for supporting us along this journey. And this season, we also had two student-led projects. So shout outs to Janish Patel, who led the Retina team in developing a service for Alzheimer's patients, and Arnav Trivedi, who led the Artemis Braille team in building a device for the visually impaired. But before all the exciting presentations, we're thrilled to invite three esteemed guests who are all industry leaders and experts within their field to speak at a panel with us. So at this point, I'm going to stop screen sharing and spotlight our three panelists, Kyle, Akshita, and Merve, and I'll give them time to introduce themselves. All right. Finding Merve, Akshita, and let me spotlight myself as well. Okay. So hi, Kyle, Akshita, and Rive. Thanks so much for joining our panel. We're so excited to hear from all of you today. So first off, could you please introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit more about the company or organization you lead? Any order is fine, so maybe we can just start off with Kyle.
Thanks, Sophia. Yeah, nice to see everybody. I'm Kyle Henry, CEO and co-founder of Tune Health. We are building food AI as medicine. And what that means for us is that we're working with patients that are pre and post surgery with their nutrition. Shocking 40 to 50% of patients that are going into surgery have some form of malnutrition. So we get the honor of helping to nourish people, and a big part of that's protein. So AI comes in as we are using AI to take a photo of your plate, calculate macros, calories, and letting the patient know exactly where they're at, trying to hit and achieve their protein goals specifically, which has a big impact on surgical outcomes. So a quick backstory for us that I'll probably come back to later is that, we had a bunch of white men developing this technology. We hadn't really talked to anybody about the potential impacts and the potential audiences that this might reach. We showed it to the first person who was a woman, and she was really upset that we may harm or negatively impact people with eating disorders. That sent me on a long journey, took me to eating disorder conferences, really took this seriously. And now I'm happy to say that we built a team that can address that safety risk. And we're using behavioral science as well as nutrition science, and our team is now really balanced, diverse, and looking at this problem from a lot of different perspectives. So I'm proud of that progress that we made, and I think that's hopefully a story that we can tell more about technologists being very focused on a problem, being very focused on their solution, but missing some of the safety risks, some of the inclusivity that was needed to broaden the understanding of this problem and how it could impact populations that we didn't know about. So that's part of our mission at Tune Health. Really happy to be here.
And thanks so much for that introduction, Kyle. That's really cool to know. Next up, maybe we can have Akshita. Oh, Akshita, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
No
Very nice
worries.
to meet you all. My name is Akshita. I am an entrepreneur and computer science student at the University of Virginia. And so I have two ventures going on right now, but the more relevant one for this panel would be QMe. And so this journey for me started, I think, in 2022 when in high school, starting in ninth grade, started to get into something called quantum computing. I'm sure if you all have heard of artificial intelligence, it's definitely been somewhere in the conversation as well. But essentially, it's a new way of computing that is based on the rules of quantum physics. And the reason why it's so relevant is because it can help solve a lot of the issues that we have in a much more efficient, accurate, and just better way. And so when I first got into this, I did a bunch of research. I attended some conferences, presented at them, and mostly my research was in the intersection of quantum computing and healthcare. I worked a little bit in machine learning as well, particularly quantum machine learning, so a lot with like cancer and just healthcare field in general. And so throughout this journey, people came to me a lot and they were very, very, very hesitant to get into quantum computing. And AI is also falling into this field, but people are just typically pretty reluctant to get into the field for whatever reason, but mainly just because they feel like they don't know enough. And I think the beauty of these fields right now is that you don't know enough, so you get to kind of pave the path that you want to take with it. And so with one of my best friends, Aditya Singar, we co-founded QMe, which basically teaches quantum computing to everybody. And so our mission statement is basically making this field accessible to all. And so in the past couple years, we've taught over 300 students. We've been featured on some really cool platforms, and we've just done a lot of work on the forefront of making this very accessible. And so that's kind of what I advocate for. I advocate for early tech education as a whole. I really, really believe that AI, quantum computing, these fields are what we need to get involved in now as students. And there's no reason to wait till you're a PhD or you're an expert. So that's what I do. My newest venture, Proco, I'm working with Darden right now. Essentially, what we do is we try to just find a more clean way to do mentorship. And so AI is really relevant in that because we're trying to implement an AI matchmaking algorithm between mentors and mentees. So my work is pretty spread out, but I am really, really passionate about bringing tech to people early and just making sure it's inclusive and making sure there's equity involved. Thank you.
That's really, really amazing. And it was great to hear from you. So let's move on to Merve.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Those were two great intros, so it always sucks to go last after that. My name is Merve. I'm the co-founder of Yekolas. So we are building a learning platform with the mission to teach, learn, and preserve low resource languages. This journey for me started back in, I want to say 2022, 2023, after the pandemic, as everyone was teaching themselves how to play guitar or be Superman. Me, it was just trying to learn my mother tongue, Lingala. I'm from the Congo. And I quickly realized there weren't many resources available, other than maybe an auntie on WhatsApp asking you to PayPal her money. So quickly, what that created for me was this project where I just wanted to learn my mother tongue, and I was paying my cousin to teach us every Saturday. And then What started as just three people ended up being more than 900 people signed up, and we were running like five classes a day, and it was overwhelming. But what was interesting in that time was the people who started joining were from everywhere. We started hearing people of other cultures saying, it's very hard for me to have access to tools that can teach me my language. And if I look to the Google Translates of the world, it translates what it doesn't transcribe. So we quickly realized and actually, that sent me through a rabbit hole of like, why is this off? What is happening with AI and Google Translate and all these big companies that's making this not understandable or not connected to these cultures and these roots. So then we created Yekola, a platform that focuses on audio first community driven approach, knowing that low resource languages are mainly tonal and they've been largely ignored from these Western models in terms of how we document language and how we process our thoughts and how we communicate. So we went from just building a learning platform to looking to build inclusive AI that not only takes a connectionist approach that you find in many of these open AI models, but a neurosymbolic that takes the time to try to understand cultural idioms, understandings, proverbs, etc. So this has been such an interesting journey for me, who had just mainly focused on kind of sports data analytics, and I find myself in neurolinguistics now and machine learning for natural language processing. So it's been fun, and this is my second year running working with OpenNLP, and this has been a lab that's been very beneficial to us and our growth. So happy to be here.
That's really amazing, and it's our privilege really to have worked with Yekola for so long. We're really glad to have um, been engaged in this ongoing collaboration with you. And in fact, one of the Yekola teams will be presenting today, so hope you all are looking forward to that.
Yes, we are.
All right. So moving on to our first question, besides being industry leaders, you're all also proponents of responsible and accessible technology, whether in terms of education or the product your company provides, such as language learning or in medicine. So in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges to responsible and inclusive technology development, and how can we address those challenges?
I guess because I'm unmuted, I should answer first. No problem. I think one of the biggest challenges in the current AI pipeline, it's really rooted in an extractive logic. So systems are often built about communities, but not with them. You see it a lot where we witness, data annotation centers in Kenya where people are not getting paid enough for, a living wage, and that goes towards big companies like OpenAI who get to use it to make billions of dollars. I think of this book I read from a professor named Rua Benjamin called Race After Code. And she talks about the new Jim Code, where inequality is automated, invisibly. Much of the work that we do is to serve the global south and preserve their cultures and ensure that we don't have the biggest cultural erasure with generative AI. And the global south always faces epistemic exclusion. Languages, values, oral traditions, all of that gets left out of training data. It's more so what's the next word I can show. So at Yekola, we call this a form of cognitive injustice. So I think to address this, we need a fundamental shift in how AI is approached. So AI must move in what I call from artificial intelligence to ancestral intelligence, grounded in memory, meaning, and relational context, really. So not just statistical predictions. So that's why we're kind of trying to build what we're doing here to focus on not just translation, but transcribing meaning.
I love that. And I just want to add on to that and just build on like the vision that you're kind of talking about. I feel like a lot of the times the problem is the biased data, but it's also just having biased assumptions to begin with. Like the tool, right? Let's make an AI tool. It's always like, okay, we want to make it for the most amount of users, the most typical user, which I think
Yeah.
is so bad because it erases, I guess, everyone else outside that mold, which is really important. And so I feel like, and also this brings up something that comes to mind, but there was this AI tool that Amazon had, and it was basically just to like look at resumes and kind of rank them in a way. And so it would literally bring down the scores of things where it would see women's name or the word women just in it, which is insane to me because I feel like that's because of that whole entire 10 years of data that was all male data. You know what I mean? So I think that fundamentally, if it was thought about before, okay, men and women, and how is this AI model going to be trained on that? If that was a conversation had before, rather than having to like recall the tool, I think that's important. I feel like that's not talked about enough because I feel like right now it's all about, okay, how can we get the highest accuracy? How can we predict the most? But the question is, who are you predicting for? And is that the right prediction that you're making? So I really, really do agree with you on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a major thing that I've really realized in trying to build what we're saying that really matches with what you said, Akshita, and I hope I'm saying that right, was, if you even think about how deep learning, the premise of it is really on taking a human Western brain and a human Western train of thought of neuroscience to build a lot of these models, not understanding that based on the language you speak and the culture you come from, you actually think differently. And we've built out these models and said, the standard for deep learning will take certain connectionist frameworks, completely devaluing and taking out how thought is processed from like an Eastern perspective or from a global South perspective. And I think Cal touched on that from a health care perspective when you look at, okay, well, how men respond to something versus how women, and that's a huge difference in how you can train a model and how a model can respond to, to the world around it. So I think the biggest problem is we have to stop with just this one track extractive logic that only comes from one viewpoint because it's going to have a huge effect in many areas.
Definitely.
Yeah, well said. I feel like I'm part attendee, still on my learning curve and part on this panel. So yeah, I think the only thing I could add is the soapbox that I find myself standing on, which is about funding. When you look at, I mean, let's look at the base layer of, take a step back from AI and just say the internet, right? And we have like five companies that are running the show here. And, there's a centralization, power, resources, and funding. And I think when we look at how that's being translated into the AI world, it's really the same. And I think I did a quick Perplexity AI search before I got on the call, and I think we're tracking towards $600 billion for generative AI funding this year. And I think what I could find around ethical AI funding, is probably 200 to 300 million, maybe give or take more than that, but we're not even at a billion, versus 600 some billion and accelerating. And I don't bring that up to say like there isn't hope because I think, that everyone that's here, the entrepreneurs, students, you're a part of the resistance. I think of this is a very important uh, calling that however you're here, whatever your passion is, I think to tap into that and all the different research that's being done. There's so many things that are not being represented and not being seen, and I think that there is going to be a wave that's going to come in response to generative AI's dominance, and I think it's going to be a really important thing to be a part of, and it's going to be our life's work. So I think what could be more passionate about that and finding your part in it. So I think that there is a lot of hope, and it's the early days of the response, and there are things that are going to be done that a lot of us aren't going to agree with, or not going to be happy about, but I think providing other solutions and other options for people is really what this work's about.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that's said, especially on the fact that, inequality is indeed a really huge problem in AI, whether it's in biased data or in development strategies that inevitably exclude one or more populations. But I really loved Kyle's point too, that despite this feedback loop of over-centralization of investment in these, unequal forms of AI development, we still have resistance movements. And that's why it's so important for organizations like the ones led by the panelists here today and for OpenNLP to join up in this grassroots movement to fundamentally shift how AI is developed and perhaps even what AI means, marking Murphy's point on, we're going from artificial intelligence to ancestral intelligence and making these models more catered to a human perspective. And on a somewhat related note, so I'm hoping to get your insights on what are the most critical steps, communities from educators to AI developers need to take to ensure that AI technologies don't inadvertently exclude or harm certain groups. And this is kind of related to Kyle's last point in the end of his response.
Yeah, I can start us off with this one. I really love this question. I feel like it's really important, especially in like the room that we're in right now, for everyone to kind of start thinking about how we can mitigate this. But I think the first thing that comes to my mind is just redefining what success and performance means for AI models. We touched on this in the previous question, but typically these AI models, and in the academia world for sure, it's based on, okay, how accurate can you get it? How high of that accuracy can you achieve? And that's it. And so typically when these data sets are so biased within themselves, you're going to get a high accuracy, but it's not really a usable model or a universal model for everybody. And so the most like famous example that comes up is when there's lots of AI models being created for the healthcare side, specifically in melanoma, right? Skin cancer. The reason why this is relevant is because they got such high accuracies, but it would only work on lighter skinned people. And so the question then becomes your model is so accurate, and it might be 90, 95% accurate, but then for people who don't look that way or have darker skin tones, it goes down by 50%. So I think these researchers and all of us as a whole need to ask ourselves, what does it mean to have something that is successful in AI? And I think that notion needs to change entirely because if your model isn't able to work for people across the board, people who, for the last example, can't speak English popular, other things, there should be always some sort of focus on every single group, not just the one that's most convenient. So I'd say that's like my biggest point for this one.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing, and I agree with that completely. I think that's a really huge problem in AI, and it requires a fundamental redefinition of what AI development means and what people should be aiming for to achieve the world that we're trying to aim for. So next up, I'd love to hear from either Kyle or Merve on this question.
I'll jump in. I think this might be a related topic, but I think that there's a lot of focus right now on super intelligence, and I think going fast. There's this big, hyped competition between the U.S. and China, and I think a lot of bad things happen when we go really fast and we don't think and we don't ask questions. Um, I think a lot of people, whether you're a researcher, you're a computer scientist, you're a builder. I mean, I think asking these philosophical, ethical questions of what does the world look like if you're successful? What does the world look like if we build super intelligence, and then nobody has a job? What is what does that look like? And is that a pursuit worth our time and our energy and our efforts? We're putting a lot of resources into that, and yeah, I think Hervé said it really well. Ancestral intelligence. I think about that so often. I think one of the human goals that we should have is to be aligned with nature and to not try to override it and cheat it. Uh, and I think that's one thing that we've lost sight of, and that's pouring into our technology is we're missing the fact of our humanity and our biology and the limits of that and what that means. And instead of trying to hack it, we should work with it and trying to be more inclusive and looking at what the current systems have produced already, and how we can make that better.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point, there's been news recently on, AGI scores and a lot of models, their companies are claiming that they're reaching or AGI or so they claim. And there's a noticeable lack of, questioning what this is really all aiming for, what these models are being built for, what communities they serve, and there's a lot of, spiraling into this path of superintelligence, as you claimed. And sometimes we really need to step back and reconsider what our technology is being used for. And finally, last but not least, we'd like to hear from Merve on this question.
And of course, I think at the core of it, we need to stop treating inclusion as an afterthought or as a
Mhm.
checkbox in our models and what we're building. But it has to be designed at the core of everything. When we talk about AGI, and creating this super intelligence that might take us over. Oftentimes the solution is like, oh, we'll just get UBI, universal basic income. But who exactly does that serve? Much of the global south live under governments that wouldn't be able to afford UBI in any case. So does it look like a world for UBI only for us in the West, and the rest of the world is just left with nothing when AI takes all the jobs? It's very much we have to ask ourselves these questions, and very much, excuse me, I have a clock here. It's very much a thing of having inclusion being at the core of what we're trying to build, even the solutions we're trying to have. Because I don't think these companies are going to stop their path towards AGI. So it's going to happen. The question is, what does a human AI centered world look like that includes everybody and not just considers us living here in the US or in Canada? So yeah, I think, we need to be able to support language equity, corpus creation in low resource languages, community annotation. And I think at the core, governance. Governance needs to happen now. We cannot be reactionary to it. We have to be very proactive. And, there needs to be governance that's happening at every level. If you ask me at the core, one of the most critical steps is, different continents, different governments coming up with their own governance and AI strategy for their people, and not just waiting for, OpenAI in the US to tell us how we should do it, and trusting that their model will be the one that protects us, or else we do kind of find ourselves in a space where it's the new empires are going to be the data centers and these companies where, before where treasures were stolen and locked in museums in London. Now it's going to be data extracted and locked in vaults in Silicon Valley. So we have to be very careful in the path we're heading right now.
Yeah, most definitely. And actually, to your point on governance, the OpenNLP team and I've been in discussions with Kyle on the topic of AI governance. And something pretty surprising is that there's really no federal legislation in the United States that governs AI in any way. And a lot of frameworks, they declare it to be the responsibilities of the CEOs of the companies themselves to regulate themselves when it comes to the development of AI. So I definitely agree that there has to be some big push to regulate how AI is developed and how it's used. And going back to a previous point, that's why grassroots movements like the ones you all are leading are so important, so that we can push for large-scale governance and make sure that inclusion becomes the new norm in AI development.
Yeah, and I think to what you just said about, the responsibility being left to the CEOs, it just goes back to that time of empire explorations. Are these CEOs going to be the new Christopher Columbuses, King Leopolds that just go where they want and extract and explore to get all this data? That's what we risk really doing by leaving it in their hands. That's why governance being built now so that no one can just get up from Silicon Valley and extract all the data in with no responsibility, no economic benefit to the people there. We have to be very careful to just allow for it to be so free range.
Exactly. And now, specifically for our student audience, what would you say students, researchers can do to best position themselves to influence the future of technology, particularly in pushing for more inclusive and socially responsible technologies, especially as they are beginning their careers?
I guess we'll reverse it. I'm unmuted again. So, I mean, I think at the core, an advantage students have is they haven't been really indoctrinated by the systems of these companies yet. See yourself as a researcher, ask the right questions, allow yourself to be multilingual across disciplines. So just don't just study computer science, study sociology, study government, politics, because everything you guys are building as, and I see computer scientists, developers as creators, right? So see yourself as a creator who has to understand the world around it to create things that can support it and help it. Um, you know, Try to understand machine learning at a post-colonial theory. At the heart, be inclusive about the AI you're trying to build and build for community. Because you have the opportunity to really look at it from a different lens. What's happening right now, you get it a lot of times, much of the top PhD and research students are being taken over by these large companies where they used to be the ones pushing back and doing their own private research to say, well, you know what, big tech, I think what you're building is wrong. And this is, what my research has showed me. All those people are being pushed into these big companies. Now, I get it. When you see those type of dollar signs, I can see why someone would do it. But before, diving into any company, try to really search and at the core decide what sort of philosophy you're going to take on in everything you build and be very rooted and grounded in what you're trying to solve and the mission you're on. And that will allow you to know whether or not you should join X company or whether or not you should build X thing for yourself. Because if you're rooted in community and actually using AI for good, it doesn't matter the route you take as long as it's tied to what your mission is and where your heart is.
I love that. And I just want to build on that, just that idea that as student researchers, we have such a gift right now that we aren't tied to some corporation. And the reason why, like you were saying, that really helps is because there's so much more freedom in how you want to solve problems and how you're going to even approach an issue to begin with. And I think that's so important. And it's a reminder for all of us because a lot of the times we think, oh, we're just students. But I think being a student is actually the best place to start. And so, just building on that as well, I think a piece of just something that I have really tried to implement in my life is just being as critical as possible of the existing systems. It's a really big in human nature just to, go with the flow, not really question things. But I think as student researchers, it's our responsibility to question these AI tools, question the very, very, very basic assumptions. Many of these tools that are out there right now that are so popular, you need access to high-speed internet. You need to know standard English. You need this expensive hardware, whatever it is. Question that. Ask yourself, how can you collaborate with others on these open source platforms, make models, share it with others, get mentors, and really question how you can make tools that are there to help people, not just in your position. Like that equity aspect really goes on a lot in student research because we have the freedom to really focus on that. And like, we were talking about the values that you have. What do you care about when you're building tech? Tech is creation, it's innovation. And for me, innovation is all about inclusion. And I think that's something that we should really, really push ourselves to think about because, again, like we're so close to the systems that we want to form as students that we really get to feel those issues firsthand and really build on them. So I think it's like such a sweet spot being a student right now and just really, really leveraging AI and just building in it.
I love the passion on this board or on this panel. I think you know the I would echo the same things, which is as a student, your whole life is ahead of you. You have the ability to think about impact, to think about the world that you want to create. Once upon a time when I graduated college, I came out. I was working on Wall Street, of course, which a lot of people wouldn't believe at this point, but that was my path at that time. I went to Wall Street. I was working there, and that was when the mortgage crisis happened, 2008, 2009. I actually watched Occupy Wall Street start outside my office, and I remember, people were yelling stuff at me, throwing stuff, and I was like, I could have been, a year older than them. I could have been, I could have been one of them, and I really resonated more with their anger at the system and kind of what had happened with the banks and everything like that. So fast forward again to me, I think like if I talk to anybody that's a student, I always am asking about passions and interests and things that drive you because if you show up and you're passionate about something, you're able to learn, you're able to acquire a lot of knowledge about that. And then if you find other people that are also working on that problem, I think that's usually a powerful alliance and ways that companies form side projects and things like that. So, always following your passions, I think, are the keys that I look at. And that's it took me some time to get here, but health was always this through line of passion. My mom being a doctor, working on community health projects with her as a child, and it all comes back to you when you really take the time to focus on what you're passionate about and you really what your calling is, which I think could be very personal to you.
Yeah, and I loved all of your points. I think these are not only, philosophical questions, but also very actionable items to step back and, question everything that you're doing and to, question what your passion is and how you can follow it. And, as you've been, you all have mentioned multiple times, question what values you want to take on, what kind of philosophy you want to take on. And, as a student myself, this was a really inspiring conversation personally because these are a lot of insights that I'll take with me to my university journey. And I'm sure a lot of us in the audience who are, high school or college students or PhD students can feel the same way. And for our audience members who are not students, I think they can remember that, they can be lifelong learners, and we're always really students ourselves, even if we have gone through a long journey in life. So I'm hoping all of our audience and including our presenters can take inspiration from your insights and apply that to their own lives. Perhaps it can change something for them. All right. So we were originally going to prompt our audience for some questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type in the chat or unmute at this point to ask anything. We'll give a couple more minutes for anyone who has questions to pop them in the chat. And again, for all audience members, this is a really great opportunity to interact with these panelists. Okay, so we have a question from Arnav. What was a big challenge in your journey towards finding or following your passion?
I can start us off. I love this question. Thank you so much for asking. I think one of the biggest challenges for me was just a lot of people were telling me that it's too early to do this. I think typically as students, people really, really, really think that a lot of people will just give you a lot of push and shove for what you want to do. And so what that kind of leads me into is just make sure you stand by what you believe in and what you're passionate about. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. I think, especially with QME, right? Teaching quantum computing to kids was such a foreign concept 3, 4 years ago, still is. And so when we just kind of woke up one day and we're being delusional, and like they tell you at Darden in entrepreneurship all the time, you have to be a little delusional. And with that being said, the biggest challenge is also that delusion because there's times where you feel so low and you feel like you are doing something that is too out of bounds or isn't being received well. But I think, again, once you reach those success metrics, people are then like, oh, okay, you were right. And it is something. So if you believe in an idea, if you believe in anything, be the biggest advocate for it. Don't let anybody tell you that this is just not going to go anywhere because that's what people are going to say until you do something with it. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really well said. I would just echo that the same thing about we're social creatures. We're highly influenced by our environment. Influence keyword here. There's a lot of ways to be influenced now today than ever. But being able to to tune all that out, keyword tune all that out, listen to yourself. I think you need to find those practices. It's not something that all of us are that learn at a young age, and finding ways to get quiet, to get silent, to shut off all the incoming onslaught of information, and uh, making sure that yeah, you're listening to yourself. What is that like versus what people are telling you? When I was first looking at leaving Wall Street, I talked to 20 of the closest people in my life. They all told me don't leave Wall Street, and that was right before I left Wall Street because I was like, I felt it in every cell of my body that I was done. Uh, and that was one of the first times that I listened to myself over other people, which I think is kind of part of this rite of passage, from child to adult. You start making these decisions. They're not always the most popular one. They're not always the ones that make sense. But I think if you're listening to the right things, they'll take you to the right place. So it's not always easy, but yeah, as long as it works with you, I think that's the thing that you got to follow.
Said I think I mirror the same experience where I left, good work experiences to pursue some of the things I'm doing now. I think to say anything differently from what Akshita and Kyle said, is just learn to eat failure for breakfast. Just try things you like, try things that set your soul on fire, do projects that are fun, and understand that you're likely to fail a lot of times. But there's a difference in, failing and giving up, but failing fast and iterating and trying again, right? So you have to kind of become comfortable with knowing that, you shouldn't get of your ideas, but you should pursue the things that set your soul on fire, and one will build momentum, right? This isn't my first startup opportunity. The first two failed miserably, which is kind of that goes in line with the stats. So they say third time's the charm. So hopefully this one sticks. Um, you know, you're gonna wear a lot of hats. You're gonna try different things. I think we often tell ourselves, my major, what I studied is my whole life. I would have never thought I'd be doing NLP. If you asked me when I graduated high school, I should have been a lawyer by now. If you asked me after that, I was doing, data analytics within sports, working with professional teams. Never that I think I'd find myself reading books on linguistics, talking to educators, across the world. So it's funny how life works. So don't clog yourself to just one idea and, be one track minded, be open to exploring and being creative. And that's why I said, I think of computer science students and builders as creatives. Be creative. See the projects you're building as, building a piece of art, music, a poem. Allow it to be something that flows, that changes, that moves on different rhythms, and you'll have fun along the way as you learn new things about yourself and what makes you passionate.
And those are all such amazing responses. Really loved every insight from you all. And I think we have time for one more question. And coincidentally, the last two in the chat are all very similar. These are more from an entrepreneurship perspective, but they're asking, what are some essential preparations that you should have or before you start an AI-based company or startup? And how do you stand out in a crowd of other, perhaps similar organizations when you're starting anew? I guess we can start with anyone. Kyle?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Really good questions, and I think it can depend. The context can depend on the field and the person. But I think if you're, I really try to be focused on problems. If you're solving somebody's problem, you might get paid for it. Then you might have, some possibility of having a company. And I think too often we look at user numbers and usage as a metric, but it's like, are we solving somebody's problem? Are we taking somebody that's has a health challenge and we're improving that outcome, in the context of what we're doing. And, for us, it's like I had to build a team that understood that problem from so many different angles. And that became my job as a CEO, as the founder, to build that team that looked at it from all these different angles so we could create the, solution that didn't exist, that nobody had thought of, that we collectively came together on. And I think bringing people together around a problem and seeing how they work, seeing how they gel, those are things that I have no control over. And, I just hope for the best. And I think that's kind of the part of team dynamics and formation that's really, yeah, artful. It's something that's goes beyond all of us individually. So I think finding other people to work with that share passions but have complementing skills, different skills, even points of tension, I think are great. I've learned to love the tension that can be created by different opinions, different skill sets that just make us better because we're hitting on something that is probably a friction point, that many people are experiencing. So, yeah, I think just finding other people that you can work with that share that passion uh, is usually something that things magic happens where you can't really plan for it, and companies are formed that way.
I love that. And I just want to add that you completely read my mind. I was going to say the same thing. And just kind of the culture that you create at your startup or your organization really, really makes a difference. And another thing I just want to add on that is just learning to be very well versed in whatever you're doing, whether that means reading literature on entrepreneurship. Like throughout my journey, I started reading more books on, okay, how do I manage myself? How do I manage others? Because fundamentally, like someone had mentioned, I forgot who, but you're wearing a lot of hats when you're an entrepreneur, and that doesn't matter if you're doing an AI startup, a quantum startup, whatever it might be. So you need to not only have a really strong team that is as crazy about it as you are, but also when things get tough, you need to know, okay, what can you control? What matters to you in that little intersection, like that Venn diagram, right? And so I think a really big part of this is really pushing yourself to instill that discipline in you, reading the news every day, kind of just getting yourself to be very knowledgeable about things. Because when you go out and talk to other entrepreneurs, when you talk to mentors, when you talk to investors, they can really, really sometimes just invest in your idea solely based on the founder, not even what your actual startup is. So being a really confident, really, really passionate founder, I think is one of the most important things. And it's a big challenge because many founders will have great ideas, but they don't know how to translate that. So I think that translation portion is incredibly important, which of course comes with your team as well.
Yeah, I mean, those are two perfect answers. Not much to add beyond that. I think maybe what I would say is, ideas are a dime a dozen. You probably are not the first person to come up with your idea. I can almost guarantee that you're not. We're not the first, but it all comes down to execution. And to execute properly is about just becoming a systems builder. So I would say a lot has changed for me from just trying to like implement my idea to building systems around the idea I have so that I can have the right team around it, so that I can have the right resources, the right process. And I think Ashikta said, reading literature on the domain you're really interested in and diving deep into it and spending time kind of in, productive thinking where you challenge your own assumptions and you kind of, okay, here's my idea, have a ChatGPT session. Here's my idea. Let's go back and forth, debate with ChatGPT, why it works, why it doesn't, and see if you're really seeing this at a different level. And, being very introspective about your idea and thinking deeply about, what are the gaps that you're missing will allow yourself to differentiate yourself because it's easy to assume that you're right. You could be wrong, and finding out where you're wrong can actually be the very thing that differentiates you. Um, you know, I've worked with startup founders who this is why I say don't get married to your idea because it's like at the core, stick to the mission. Your idea for how you accomplish that mission may change, right? And you have to allow it to change because I think what Kyle said, building for people, focus on the people who actually need it. Because when you talk to them, you may think, hey, I'm going to provide, a yellow jacket. And everyone's like, we don't wear yellow, we want red. And if you keep trying to force everybody to wear a yellow jacket, you're gonna piss a lot of people off. So spend the time to figure out why do they wear red? Is it a cultural thing? Is it a preference thing? And then again, be very introspective. Why was I wrong? Why did I think yellow? Just to keep it very simple. A good book that has helped me for kind of systems thinking and learning how to set it up. It is called The Great CEO Within. I would recommend that 100%, not just as something to read, but to study, like annotate, highlight it, write down what you learn and see where you can implement it in your idea and your team. That's more something to add once you have a team in the early days, just be very explorative. Just test your ideas, see what fails, what doesn't, and yeah, that will differentiate you.
All really great responses and perfect for concluding this panel. Definitely a lot of emphasis on, reading and being well versed in your domain. And I really love that analogy at the end about understanding your customer base. Um, so that is going to be all for our panel today. Thank you so much to our three panelists. These are some truly insightful answers, and we all learned so much from you. Definitely all students with the ambitions to become researchers, to make a change in AI, or to become entrepreneurs and start their own companies. They'll all take away so much from this panel. So thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, we're going to move on to the project presentations. So I'll remove the spotlights from you three and then restart the slideshow. All right. So we have 5 project presentations today, starting off with the Yekola project. So Aditya and Tadase, would you two please unmute and turn on your cameras so I can spotlight both of you? Just searching for your icons. All right, perfect. Now go ahead and take it away. One of you guys can share your screen.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Okay, so hey everyone, my name is Aditya. I'm joined by Tadez, representing our work on Yekala. So just a brief introduction of our team. My name is Aditya Nanasundar. I'm an AI engineer.
Hi everyone, my name is Tadessa. I'm the engineer of the OpenNLP. Yeah.
Okay, so this is Africa. And here are some of those popular languages spoken in Africa, such as Swahili, Lingala, Yoruba, and Amharic. And overall, these languages have over 1.2 billion speakers, but only 5% of these languages have been digitized, meaning these are low resource languages. And this is true for many different continents around the world, such as North America, South America, Asia, and Europe. So this is the problem that we're solving. 90% of languages have not been digitized. Most of the internet's data is in English, and a lot of these online services lack language support for these languages that are low resource. Major apps and tools cannot teach or translate these languages, such as Duolingo, Google Translate, and ChatGPT, yet there are over 7,000 languages worldwide. There is no multilingual support for these languages, such as chatbots can't really understand these languages, marketing material is not in these languages, and the global economy is not really favored towards immigrants who speak these languages. Additionally, African and Asian languages have the lowest resources. There's there's about 2 billion speakers of these languages, with 100 million of these speakers living outside their continent. Yet less than 2% of these data sets online are actually in these languages. And did you know that Arabic and Bengali are some of those popular languages in the world, but these are also considered low resource languages, meaning they have very less online resources about them. So our solution is Yekala. Yekala is a pioneering language learning exchange app emphasizing audio-first, community-driven learning. We let users create the voice and written datasets needed to digitize these languages. Our mission is to teach, learn, and preserve low-resource languages. So you're probably wondering, how do we do this? Well, there's two main steps in this process. One is the community-based language exchange, where users of our app can talk to an AI model and can also talk to other users on the app to kind of, get situated in their language and also learn their language a bit more. And the way we train our AI models to actually teach languages is through our crowdsourced data. So the more a user interacts with our model, the more data we get from it, and that goes back into training the model, which makes our models even better and even more accurate at at making these low resource languages more accessible. And V1 of our app actually launched in spring 2025.
Yeah. As a first phase, we're going to develop Yokola language learning app, both mobile and web app. So in the first version, the first version of the app contains like communities can join the application without any freely. So different communities can join us application and create their posts like language and culture related contents, and communities can like share, comment their educational posts, culture and language related educational posts, and users can customize their profile like their native language, what they are interested to learn, what language they are interested to learn. And yeah, the first version also contains chatting service. So communities or users can send messages between communities, direct message, private message, or group message. And we're going to integrate AI features with this language learning application, both speech and chat, text chatting AI features. Yeah, for the first the speech to text feature, we fine-tune Whisper, OpenAI's Whisper model for more than 5 loud South African languages like Afrikaans, Lingala, Swahili, Yoruba, Tui, and Igbo. This for speech to text feature, and we for the text only chatting service, we fine-tune Llama 3.18b using online available question answering Amharic and Lingala question answering data sets. Next slide. Yeah, as a phase two, yeah, we noticed that challenge of data scarcity, especially for trying to fine tune or customize open source LLMs. So we faced the challenge, the scarcity of data sets. So as a phase two, yeah, as a phase two, we identified that there is data scarcity, especially conversation data for those large source languages. So yeah, we only fine-tune Llama 3.5, I mean 3.1 ATB model using available any domain question answering data, question answering, maybe from Wikipedia and other available datasets, general question answering. Using available general question answering dataset, we fine-tune Llama 3.1. And here is the second slide is the sample of the chatting from our fine-tuned model, and it's in Lingala. And we asked our chatting model that in Lingala as literally meaning what is the most important thing in the life of the Congo, and the chatting model responds that it first of all it repeats the question again, and the next content is not much natural to related with our question. So we identified there is a conversational data gap here to get a better conversational data. So our phase two plan is to create conversational data using the state-of-the-art closed source language models. Next slide. Yeah, here is our solution. So we tried to generate synthetic data from Gemini 2.5 Pro. And yeah, and then we evaluate, verify the generated conversational data using native speakers. And then here is the sample from Amharic large source language. And yeah, the generated conversational data is between 2% here. So, and language experts, native language experts verified it, and it's almost, it looks natural. So yeah, we're going to generate conversational data for our chatbot model using Gemini 2.5 Pro. And during our prompt to generate this conversational data, we include language curriculum and yeah, different contexts, DPO contexts to include African culture, our social languages, content is educational. So we are guided the model to generate using language learning curriculums. Yeah, and then we are generating right now, and we are evaluating parallelly using native speakers generated data. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, here is our future work. Yeah, as I mentioned before, we're generating right now at least 25,000 interest per hour, 10 plus targeted large source languages. So we're assembling communities from large source languages to verify our generated synthetic data plus for the Yoko lab. So yeah, open source verified conversational data, and we are going to use this generated data to fine tune our chatbot model. Here is a screen. The first one is generated sample of from Lingala, and the second one is from Amharic.
Yeah, so here's some of the impacts that Yekola has made in our collaboration with OpenNLP. So our waitlist has over 2,000 users. We built and trained 10 models that speak African languages. Our users are located in over 30 countries. We won over $40,000 in pitch competition grants, and we're partnered with 3+ student-led organizations. So with all that being said, are there any questions on anything we said so far in this presentation? Yeah, thank you, Merve.
So to our audience members, now's the time where you can feel free to unmute and say your questions or comments. and type in the chat if you have any questions.
Yeah, so I see a question in the chat. Any plans to expand your data set to more languages? Of course, yeah. So as I mentioned in the beginning, there are a lot of different continents that have the same problem as Africa, where there's a lot of the research languages, a lot of these languages that many people speak have not been digitized. Um, and I think the next biggest market other than Africa is Asia. So I think once we're kind of situated within the African market space, we can kind of look towards Asia, then North America, South America, and beyond. Um, and then with the actual generating the data for these languages, Ted's talked about our synthetic data generation. So I think we're gonna use the same pipeline for these languages as well, um, to get the data sets for those languages. I see another question. What was the training workflow for your fine-tuning of models such as Whisper? Ted, do you want to answer this question? Because I think you have more knowledge on this one.
Yeah, we are using available speech data, so we fine-tune perfect only five plus languages Whisper, OpenAI Whisper model. So we are using only the available. It's more than less than 1,000 hours data set. So right now there are coming a lot of speech data sets like Niger voice and others. So for now, we fine-tune Whisper only available Amharic and Lingala and five other large source languages. We fine-tune on the top of OpenAI Whisper model. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
All right, and I think that's all for your presentation. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. That was fabulous. With that, I'll remove the spotlight from both of you. So let's just remove that. And next, let's invite the Artemis Braille team to come up and present. So would Shub, Nikhil, Abhiraj, and Arnav, I see that you've already turned your camera on, which is great. So let me add spotlights to all four of you. All right, whenever you're ready.
Hey everyone, my name is Arnav, and I was mentoring this team, and our project is called it's part of Artemis Braille called Real-Time Braille Translation, and yeah. So this is our team. You guys can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shub. I'm the MLAI intern for Artemis Braille.
I'm Abhiraj. I'm also an ML/AI intern.
I'm Nikhil, and I'm also an ML/AI intern.
Yeah, so today we'll kind of be going over, the general problem context, what the actual problem is and kind of why it's important, as well as, our mission and our project itself, what these individuals have been able to accomplish throughout this project, as well as, our impact and further work and kind of we've been doing in order to progress. So the main thesis of this project is Braille, right? So, you know, if you guys know about blind people and effectively their main use in terms of language is Braille, and the way they interact with the environment, the way they communicate is a lot of the times using Braille. However, there has been a recent trend that Braille has been less frequently used and less frequently used throughout the United States because of the fact that there has been a large Braille literacy crisis. And the actual statistic to back this up is that over 1 million blind individuals actually need Braille in order to learn. However, only 700 full-time Braille teachers are available in order to teach Braille, right? So there's a big lack of Braille teachers. And because of this, there has been difficulties by a lot of individuals who are trying to learn Braille within the blind community, that they have a lack of resources and a lack of ability to be able to learn Braille freely and accessibility and excessively because of the fact that there's a lack of teachers and a lack of technology to support them in that mission of learning Braille, right? So our kind of mission throughout as an overall goal is kind of building something that can help blind people be able to learn Braille effectively and actually have the ability to contribute to society and other means. So there's been a couple of existing solutions. One of the main existing solutions is called refreshable braille displays. And what these are basically they're touchpads that, you can use in order to sort of interact with braille as well as read any type of braille, right? The problem with this is that it's often $15,000 in average cost, and it's often very, very difficult for using if you're young children. And, it's not that interactive. It has no capabilities that allows it to be useful and interactive for a lot of students, right? So a lot of times they're not able to effectively learn braille. And it's often used as a way to shortcome because of the fact that there's a lack of Braille teachers, right? So it's often used in that way. However, it's not very effective, and a lot of times they don't have any, learning aspect that is useful. So the goal of this project is to effectively build a system that can help people learn Braille, right? And as part of that project, these mentees have been working to build a way to translate Braille using machine learning, and they're going to go ahead and talk about their translation pipeline and how they've built something that can help translate Braille.
So right now, in regards to existing translation technologies like RetinaNet and optical character recognition, this is all part of the problem because they too aren't good enough. Basically, RetinaNet usually fails on different writing styles and formats, while OCR, which is again optical character recognition, usually fails under poor lighting or like uneven pages. Also, these tools like don't provide real-time conversation, which we need to engage students. With all this, our goal is to develop a VLM that is able to fill these gaps, accurately translating Braille, and is able to hold real-time conversations.
Yeah, so now I'm going to get into the model pipeline. So our model is called QuenVL Braille, and it's a lightweight Braille character translation framework that kind of repurposes the already pre-trained visual encoder of QuenVL in order to do Braille translation. QuenVL was originally is a vision language model that was developed for generative tests. By adapting QuenVL's pre-trained vision backbone to the task of Braille classification, we were able to figure out that these generative multimodal models can be repurposed for more accurate and low latency image classification in these settings. Our pipeline includes different data sets that have been pre-processed and curated of already embossed Braille characters, a classification segment that is trained with cross-entropy loss, and model evaluation through accuracy, F1 scores, and different latency benchmarks. And also compared to the baseline models, as Abhiraj was saying, QuenVL offers a much more competitive performance. With lower computational cost, it's cheaper, and it's much easier to enable deployment on Raspberry Pi smart headsets, which is what we are planning to use for our final product. Additionally, there are a lot of other benefits of QuenVL, including that it can has strong few shot performance, it can handle open vocabulary visual classification, and it can even support text conditioned image understanding. So here's what we've kind of done so far. We've already finalized our data set and have trained our model with this data. And we've written a majority of our research paper, including the literature review, and we're almost finished talking about our model and the computer science behind it. And then also, we've developed the 3D model for the headset. So we're gonna start printing that pretty soon as well.
So let me kind of go over the timeline for a project. We've developed the 3D model for our headsets. We've also engineered the Quen VLM model. We've completed both those tasks, and our next two tasks are going to be developing a pipeline with Llama 3.1 and also ensuring that our final product has better efficiency and has text-to-speech so that we can have users easily access it. Now, for potential impact, first let me go over the image on the right. The pipeline for a product is you basically have a Braille image, and then our Quen model kind of converts that from Braille to text, and then from text we use LLMs to convert it to multiple languages, and finally to speech. So our impact is that because of the braille literacy crisis, we have a lot of customers and users who can potentially benefit from this product. And if we use multiple languages in our LLMs, that will also ensure that we have people from different cultures who can access the product. And lastly, we also have scalable deployment. We're targeting Raspberry Pi and other edge devices using this camera headset so that we can reach out to low resource schools and they can also access Artemis Braille. For future work, we're planning to expand to multiple languages by using multilingual heads. We're also planning to do vision enhancement, which basically means that we're planning to make sure that our model better understands dot patterns. We're going to do augmentation improvements so that it can have better accuracy on blurry and distorted and low quality braille images. And lastly, we also want to make sure that our efficiency latency is optimum to ensure that we shrink the model to save battery and it runs smoothly on the headset. We also want to include a conversational AI layer so that our LLM not only converts it to multiple languages, but also interacts with the user so that they can learn easily. We're planning to include voice improvements so that while our LLM is of multiple languages, we also have text to speech that aligns with our LLM and converts to multiple languages. And once we finish all of this, we're going to be deploying our product for user testing and publishing a research paper.
So in terms of real world integration, the computational model that our team has been working on is directly going to be part of the actual headset that we've already developed, right? So effectively, as part of the overall Artemis Vision project, we've been able to present to a research conference called NNGE to various esteemed Army scientists and engineers. We've received a $5,000 grant as well as partnered with a India-based Braille accessibility corporation called JDable, and we're working towards deployment of our product into various facilities and testing centers, and also we're continuously getting feedback from industry leaders and experts in terms of my local area, which is Virginia. So we've been in contact with various experts in the Institute of the Blind as well as other institutes locally in order to kind of further improve the model and improve the overall product so it's actually can be used in the real world. Um, so in terms of the overall product, the computational model kind of goes under this overall process of the headset. So what it does is that it can take any piece of Braille, for example, if there's a Braille in the library or a school or anywhere, right? And it's able to effectively take that piece of Braille and perform a translation on that piece of Braille. And then based on that translation of the Braille itself, the user can then go ahead and try to, learn what that Braille is, what it means, what is its semantic meaning, and understand its representation semantically, as well as understand, how it correlates to Braille in general, right? So it's able to, get questioned about that piece of Braille and other pieces of Braille around it in order to kind of have a good learning experience that is adjacent to actually having a teacher or instructor within your team. So, in terms of the actual model, the headset, that is one initial version. We're also working on experimenting with AI glasses as a better form factor and working directly with industry leaders in our local area in order to actually deploy. And we're very close to deployment in terms of that. So that's a very good feedback loop for us to improve our overall product, right? So the model that the OpenNLP team members have been working on is directly being used right now and being tested into that overall product. And we're hopefully looking towards continually distributing free models and free prototypes to local centers near me. And hopefully we can kind of continue that thought process of, getting it out there, and then we're able to sort of improve the product so it's actually useful. And here's some acknowledgements of people that we've been able to meet in terms of through marketing online and just kind of reaching out to people via cold email. And we're really happy to have some good people around us to kind of advise us and make sure it's actually useful and not something that's like just another, project that kind of is not actually, used. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we'll open the floor to any audience questions. Feel free to unmute and call out your question or type it in the chat. Okay, so it looks like we have a question in the chat. Did you face any roadblocks in your project?
I feel one of the roadblocks we faced was definitely finding a good data set because um, finding data sets with Braille are kind of hard and they're not really available. And secondly, I think this is true for all kind of ML projects is we just had to kind of work with hyperparameter tuning to make sure that we actually got good results. So that took a bit of time and that was a challenge as well.
Another big challenge was actually deployment of the model in the context of a chip such as Raspberry Pi or sort of embedded system, right? Because the fact that a lot of these edge devices, they really struggle on running models efficiently, right? And we wanted to run the model straight on the device itself rather than like running on the cloud because the fact that that's like a lot of latency associated with that, right? So we wanted to work towards putting it locally, right? So kind of ensuring that the model is useful and accessible to that Raspberry Pi or whatever we were trying to use and making sure that actually works efficiently and actually works, in real time is definitely a big challenge and actually, applying the model that we've been working on in terms of OpenNLP and kind of applying that into our project.
All right, and if there are no other questions, we'll wrap up this presentation. Fabulous job to the Artemis team. And next up, we'd like to welcome the Retina team. So Josh and Anurag, please turn on your cameras and I'll add spotlights to you. Oh, let me just remove the spotlights from the existing presenters.
Okay, can I start?
Sure, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, hello everyone. Today we are presenting Retina. Our project is called Remembrance. So my name is Josh, and I'm also presenting with Anurag. So our main goal is to present and build intelligent companions that can hold personalized, emotional, resonant conversations. So we noticed really three main problems. Number one, absence of contextual therapy. So right now, AI is really unable to genuinely process human emotional states and is missing authentic emotional resonance with users. Secondarily, there's also fragmented memory architecture. Right now, memory systems are not that great, and information becomes really isolated and separate in neural pathways. And lastly, there's limited emotional understanding. So right now, AI does not really have the therapeutic approaches based on situational context. The main purpose of this entire project is to help Alzheimer's patients in particular, as they're having trouble with memories issues. So, what we are building is a system that can solve, hopefully, this issue. So, we have three main features here. We have enter memories. So, here in this case, we can look down here. We can illustrate your memories based on your people you love. So now remembrance can like actually look at your memories. Next, we have provoke memories. So here the AI assistant tells the person to continue talking to them, to try to provoke more and to get more memories from the person. So here they talk about what season was it? Was it warm or cold? Then lastly, we have store memories. So you can store your own memories just to make sure you'll remember them. And the main reason why we want to use memory graphs connected by events, relationships, and individuals. This is because memory graphs are way more intuitive for the AI to understand because there's relationships. Compared to like a table, this is so much more efficient and also gives the semantically related context. Semantically, just like similar meaning. So the hope is to make remembrance serve as a therapeutic memory repository for Alzheimer's patients where memories are not stored in Notion, but also encoded within a semantically meaning knowledge graph. So the main reason we want to use graphs is three reasons. Number one, contextual memory reintroduction. So we want the person to be able to think and get their memories back. And also because memories that are all related. See here, you can see this picture of a person having a relationship with their father, and this contextualize. So if you had like a person here, and like the person you talk about yourself, you can also relate to the father. That's the idea of having this contextual memory reintroduction. We also have memory prediction. So based on the person's memory, we predict what can be future memories, which is also very important, so that we can understand themselves better. And lastly, we have emotion linked memory trails. So based on the memories they have certain emotions tying with them, which helps better understand yourself and Alzheimer's patients overall. So here's how the platform looks right now. We have This is how the UI looks. We have a person here talking about their dad, and how their dad was really important to them when they're facing tough times. And you can see here how the AI assistant helps by first telling, like, being kind, and then after that focuses on how how to continue the conversation and try to get the person to understand themselves more by asking about the challenging period and their father. And yeah, see, it engages in natural, casual conversations that prompt and preserve family-centric memories. And on this side, we have the UI of the graphs itself. You can have a graph here, you have some settings. And this graph's about Tokyo summer. So someone went to Tokyo in the summer. And they talked about how they traveled there with their mom and dad for 5 days. And you can add your memories here. So here's a video for us to watch. It's just exactly it's an overview of.
Introducing Remembrance by Retina, the AI-powered memory companion that fights Alzheimer's with love. Remembrance creates a living memory repository that preserves your family's most precious moments in a knowledge graph designed to mirror how the human mind naturally stores and recalls memories. Don't let Alzheimer's steal the moments with your loved ones that deserve to be remembered forever. Through natural conversation, Remembrance provides gentle reminiscence therapy that feels effortless for patients while building a beautifully organized archive of family memories.
Oh yeah, that's just a quick overview of the platform itself. Anurag.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So, hi guys. So as you have seen in the demo video exam, so the question is arises why now? So as you, according to researchers found that Alzheimer's disease affecting over somewhere around 7.2 million of Americans at the age of 65 and older. So and if nothing changes, the number will survive. I mean, until 2060, it's going to be maybe 13.8 millions, which is kind of very concerning. And on the top of that, emotional toll and this in this boom of AI, this already costed this to United States more than the 400 billions a year in one way or another. So there is also find that every 3 seconds worldwide there's some development disease of Alzheimer and the dementia. So the thing is, as in every 3 seconds there's a patient we have found in Alzheimer, that it means that over 55 million of worldwide around having the dementia. Some in 2026, I mean, and 27 until then. So the first why this movement so urge of this innovation is that uh, since number is increasing day by day, so the cost is soaking, and there is the key sequence of two-third of clinician in US now some form of health focused AI up to I guess 78% of just since last year. So as I've told that increasing of the patients at 66 for physician circulation now using health AI, and which is around 78% increase to 2023. Next screen, please. Yeah. So we were trying to think in that way that if the numbers are increasing and the costs are getting higher, we need something a single platform for to handle all this, and that's how our awareness can come. But it's important to analyze our competitive landscape, how we are aiming to become the definitive in all platform for therapy and memory care in Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative disease. So as you see, we have chat GPT's kind like models, which is generally based on trained on general data are presented all around the world and the internet. But we want our remembrance to be focused on the single based on our patients or like 16-year women want to talk what they have done in the past weeks if let's say they forget. So as you can see the primary focused on the therapy memory platform, which is a GPT. Remember, we are doing as remembrance, while ChatGPT is only focusing on the general AI systems. And the obedience is kind of the personal knowledge management. We want everyone to personalize their knowledge in one place. The core tech you have seen is we are using the large language models and the dynamic knowledge graph, like Josh observed, by using a graph because graph is somewhere we need to connect all this dot together so that the previous context memory will be there and the more accuracy of knowledge and remembrance was there. The memory organization it's a kind of a semantic knowledge graph with emotional tagging. So with this graphical knowledge, thoughts are connected to each other within. We are using NeoJ4 database for that. So conversation interface, as you have seen the demo version, we have emotion intelligence conversation between the LLMs and users, and based on that, we have seen a tremendous amount of results. But because there is some in chat GPT kind of thing, we have question answer and chatbot based, but these might be a limitation at some point. Now we do have multimodal support, so our users, the Alzheimer patient can use the text, photos, and videos and voice recording so for their input, and they will get a tremendous amount of output they want according to their needs. Now, then we have emotional intelligence because most of this we are focusing on the emotional intelligence. Once we are so much into that, we want human and computer interaction at a point that emotion linked with our the memory traits. Yeah. So next slide, please. Yeah. So as we have go far into that and integrating with Obisient and the Caprons, we have other applications were integrated. We found that we need two kind of customers there. We have either B2B business to company and business to business. So we are so as we in initial phase we are at the basically a free forever version for our customers, the Alzheimer patients and their family members, and we have the customer version for our healthcare and clinic versions, so that they get a really accurate amount of data and really accuracies so that they can procure and they prescribe the medicines and advice for their patients, family members. Please next. Yeah. So the market is increasing day by day. In the 2025, we have 27.8 the growth rate right now. let's consider of 55 million of project Alzheimer patients are somewhere around with a $20 per month that's planned for a single time. But as a global digital therapy market, we want more that, not in terms of the revenue, but in terms of the output we are generating to focusing on our Alzheimer patients and helping our industry, healthcare industry forever. So under 1% total Alzheimer population is there, so we want to decrease that thing with our product. Next. Yeah. So the user adaptation project, we are thinking about projecting it as far as we can. So until 2025, 2030, maybe the uh, millions and 10 millions of users will be there, and will be 50 more organizations, so that we can help healthcare industries. And early growth in business to company will be driven by the grassroots we are affecting, and the business to our patients and the family members will be lying with the, the innovative adoption in their healthcare. Next slide.
Okay, now we can play the video.
When I get home, I want you. When I get home, I want you. Hello, 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 hello. I got places to be.
Okay, if you actually want, you could follow LinkedIn. This is okay. Uh, that's about it. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you guys can join as well. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, since we're running a little bit short on time, if you have any questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat, and Josh or Anurag will get back to you in the Zoom chat. But Retina is a really, really cool project, so we highly recommend you check them out on LinkedIn and join their waiting list if you're interested. All right, let's move on to the next presentation. Josh and Anurag, there's a question in the chat, so feel free to address that in Zoom. Okay, let me just remove the spotlights from you two. Next up, we have the Earsight team, and I myself will be joining into this presentation alongside my teammate Arya.
Hey, I'm Arya.
All right, hi everyone. Let me just share my screen so we can begin this presentation. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia, as you know. Arya is presenting with me, and we'll be going over our work on developing AI-powered literacy services with the Earsight company. So here is our team. We have our wonderful mentor, Cleo, our teammate, Anurag, who also presented for Retina, and
Arya, I'm here.
yeah. All right. So in our agenda, we'll be starting off with a bit of background on our project, then moving on to Earsight's mission as a company, talking a little bit about our progress that we made so far, and then our future directions. So for some context, in the United States, there is a literacy crisis. In fact, 20% of United States adults are considered to be functionally illiterate, which means they are reaching only the lowest reading level by education standards. And among fourth grade students, the Department of Education found in an assessment that 40% of them are essentially non-readers, which means their reading levels are far below standards to be considered functionally literate, and only 1/3 of these fourth graders are reading proficiently by NAEP levels. So considering that the United States has reading levels that lag behind several other developed nations, it's worth taking a closer look at the system that's raising these young students. So within the literacy space, there's two general reading curricula that have been established, and there's an ongoing debate on which is best for students. But before we go into these curricula, first just introducing a breakdown of different literacy skills. We have phonology, which relates to the connection between sounds and words, and we have syllables and syntax and semantics, which goes deeper into grammar and sentence structure. Now, in balanced literacy, each lesson combines all these different skills from phonology to grammar, and in practice during these lessons, students are encouraged to engage in some guesswork, which means they might meet rules they haven't seen before, and they're pushed to infer the correct sounding or meaning of a word depending on context, so there's a bit of trial and error here. Whereas in the science of reading curriculum, these different skills are introduced sequentially, one at a time, with an explicit focus on phonics-based instruction, so the students know what different words sound like. And the instruction within the science of reading curriculum is very rule-based, which means that in practice sessions, the readings contain rules that have already been introduced to students that they're already familiar with. Now, more on the science of reading curriculum. First of all, it's grounded in decades of research that have found it to be suitable for the ways students' brains develop and how they learn and grow, hence the name Science of Reading. Additionally, the guided practice portion of lessons strikes a balance between explicit rule-based instruction, so an I do, you watch type of lesson, and also allows students to explore their own independent love for reading by allowing them to engage in different reading passages. Now, one key element of the science of reading curriculum is that the lesson structure might make it easier for students with learning disabilities such as dyslexia to follow along, since it nurtures engagement in reading without tossing random unexpected variables at the students that might discourage them if they don't know how to face them. So here's just a visual on how the science of reading curriculum works. This is Scarborough's reading rope, which was devised in 2001 in the Handbook of Early Literacy Research by Dr. Hollis Scarborough. It's just a more in-depth visual depicting the skills that are required for fluent reading. So you can see here, there's an early breakdown of the skills towards the left side, which depicts the beginning of a student's growth, and this gradually combines them together. In lessons, our students are more comfortable with the individual skills, and finally, all these skills are merged together into proficient reading when the students have fully developed their reading capabilities. Now, Earsight's mission as a company is focused on developing online literacy services for students of all learning needs, which means its app, CC Pal, follows a science of reading evidence-based curriculum, which focuses on regular phonics-based practice to help students learn to form the connections from sound to letter to syllable to word. And towards the right side of the screen, you can see some of the examples of the exercises in the app that help students stay engaged. For example, there's a crossword here, there's some puzzle games here that help students get their regular practice with literacy.
Talking about literacy, writing is a really fundamental component of literacy, just as essential as reading and speaking in a student's overall language development. And to support this skill, Earsight's app includes a feature called Sketch a Sound along with the other exercises designed to help students connect phonetic sounds to the written form. In this activity, students are prompted with a word and are asked to draw the first letter that corresponds to the initial sound. For example, when given the word nest, the student's expected response would be a handwritten letter N. Currently, evaluating these handwritten attempts requires manual review by educators or evaluators or the students themselves, which is really time consuming and limits scalability. To address this, our goal was to develop an automated feature that can assess the sequence and structure of the strokes used to form the letter. And just to clarify, a stroke sequence is an ordered series of lines and curves that makes up a whole letter. For example, the letter A, starting from the top middle, if you can visualize it, you pull back around, and then once you get to the bottom, you push up, and then you push down, right? And then for B, there's another set of instructions. For C and D, and so on for the rest of the alphabet and for capital. In guided practice, right, students are expected to trace over predefined letter outlines, and their performance can be evaluated using metrics like integrated absolute error, which measures the area between the student's strokes and the reference outline, effectively capturing how well the students maintain smooth and precise curvature, and penalizing exponentially increasing error. However, in unguided practice, such as with sketch-a-sound or similar exercises, students are expected to write freehand or with very loose guidelines, and this introduces several challenges when trying to apply the same evaluation methods. For example, students may produce variations in the letter shape or use a different stroke order than the reference instructions, and these inconsistencies can make it really difficult to directly compare a student's attempt to the ground truth using alignment-based metrics such as integrated absolute error. And to address this issue, we begin by taking the raw input, formatted as a sequence of ordered coordinates, and normalize it before applying pre-processing steps to extract meaningful features, such as the coordinates and the lines between them, the instantaneous curvature between the coordinates, and the change in X and Y. And then we rasterize all this data onto a 4-channel image-like representation, each channel encoding a different aspect of the stroke data. One contains the original coordinates, like I've said, and so on and so on. This multi-channel representation is then passed through 2 models. First, a letter classification model, which predicts the most likely letter, and it also predicts a confidence score or an uncertainty score, which can be interpreted as how well the overall shape relates to the ideal shape. And second, a stroke level image segmentation model is used to segment out the individual strokes and determine their ordering. And this is conditioned on the letter class. So while there are pre-existing commercial tools for this purpose, they are focused mainly on improving penmanship as opposed to helping students learn penmanship. Additionally, most require specialized hardware that is capable of extracting a lot of information from the writing process, which is something that not all schools or students may have access to. So in order to train the pipelines and fine-tune the segmentation model, we started data collection, which involved handwriting plausible data. And to ensure data representation, we tried many levels of accuracy, which induced a variety of wonderful attempts, such as this attempt that looks like an A with a high heel, and this other very malformed attempt, right? And then we can take these attempts and manually segment them into their corresponding stroke classes for a segmentation model, including an error class for potential deformities in the strokes that need to be separately considered, right? And here you can see the platform we created for that. Since we don't have access to a large repository of data, a meta-learned model is more suitable because it can generalize better with smaller data sets. To clarify, a meta-learned model is one that adapts its parameters dynamically to each new input, enabling it to analyze data more effectively across many diverse tasks. Moving forward, we plan to further develop this model and build a robust segmentation model with the ultimate goal of integrating both into Earsight's app for real-time handwriting evaluation so that we can improve literacy in youth. Thank you.
All right. And at this point, I'll stop sharing my screen. If you have any questions, thank you so much, Cleo. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and I will get to them. But in the meantime, since we're a little bit short on time, let's hop right over to the next presentation, which Arya will be taking over since it is the presentation for the Carnegie Mellon University project.
Give me 1 second.
All right, take your time.
Thank you. There we go. There. You guys can see it? Yes? No? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is our project and its highlight, which stands for Human in the Loop Interactive Tool for Image Editing. And just as a note, we used a similar slideshow for the conference we presented in last year, IEEE Big Data 2024. And this project started around a year and a half ago. So a bit of context, mistranslations have historically been a very big problem with very consequential impacts. For example, Pepsi translating their slogan, "Come alive with the Pepsi generation," into China translated it as Pepsi brings your relatives back from the dead. And HSBC2, which is a bank, translated their slogan, assume nothing to do nothing in different markets. And they had to spend more than $10 million in replacements and reparations. And mistranslations also have big impacts on people's ability to communicate effectively, right? And for example, here are two menus you can see, right? And both these English translations have nothing to do with what they actually mean, right? So the fish estimates, like estimation has nothing to do with it. But of course, this is part of the problem with mistranslation. But with the surge of research in the NLP space, translations between languages have been heavily focusing on and not just addressing functional translation, but for basic communication, but cultural translation, as well as covering country or culture specific nuances or references in subjects such as humor. Humans are not specifically designed to communicate through text, right? We are multimodal entities, and studies have shown that 90% of the information transmitted through our brain are visuals, right? And they're processed at around 60,000 times faster than text in our brain. And along with greater long-term retention, uh, platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and the entirety of the internet have made it such that visual and auditory means are the primary mediums through which the average person ingests their information. And which warrants an effective way to translate visuals, right? Because, for example, Yakala, shout out, is translating audio, right? But there's no real way to translate visuals yet, right? And traditionally, translating images has been done through creative commerce applications such as Adobe, DaVinci Resolve, Canva, and others, with applications in social media, digital photography, graphic design, advertisements, whatever, right? And image editing models, which have been coming up more recently because of the surge in machine learning, have also had increasing performance over time. And this is owed to the development of and advancement of diffusion models. Right? But there's a really key problem with this, right? And the problem is that these models are data dependent and they're all specialized for specific tasks. And what this means is that they're able to perform really well on specific editing tasks, but they really struggle with other tasks. For example, Instruct Pix to Pix is a state-of-the-art diffusion-based image editing model. And here on the left, this example, swap sunflower with roses, right? It does really well with this, right? You can see there's not really anything wrong. It even changes the leaves so that it's more in line with the rose, right? And it doesn't interfere with the rest of the image. But for cases like swapping the color of a tie or more fine-grained edits, you can see it really struggles, right? Like it doesn't even change the color of the tie, it changes the color of the coat. And for intra-object editing, like the example on the right, it doesn't even do anything, right? And parts of these errors can be owed to the model not being actually able to understand the instructions given, right? These models are not built to understand the instructions, more so just to carry them out, right? That's how they've been trained. And feature that could help improve this, which is not there in existing image editing software, is human-in-the-loop support, right? And what this could do is a human-in-the-loop system could help and complex understand and break down complex tasks into more simpler ones, right? And the benefits of this is that it really provides extremely valuable data for model calibration and training in the human interaction, in the series of human and AI interactions. But this would require a really intuitive UI that is accessible to people from all over the globe, right? Accessible and interpretable. And introducing our platform. We developed this around a year ago, and it was a comprehensive multi-step image editing and data collection platform for cultural transcreation to evaluate multiple diffusion-based image editing models for the specific tasks. Right, here's the pipeline. You can see it. And I'm just going to tour you through the UI, right? So here's the prompt, right? Replace sleeping tiger with an alligator, right? It's not the overall prompt, but this is a specific prompt. So the core principle of our platform is that it is iterative, right? You can build progress over time, right? So you can break down, like I said, you can break down that really big complex task. Let's say taking this image of a tiger in a forest and replacing it with a image of a alligator in a swamp, right? Um, you have to break that task down into many different subtasks for the actual image generation to be effective, right? For example, the first step could be replace a sleeping tiger with an alligator, and we have provided a option for reference images, right? For example, for object-based image editing tasks, you can add a reference image that models can use, and from this image from this information, we can extract what the user intends to edit as well as its purpose, and select um, and generate prompts for relevant applicable diffusion models, right? So if the user decides to upload a reference image, we then allow them to optionally specify relevant uh, parts of the reference and base image by hand drawing the masks or using Meta's SAM2 model, which is really convenient. So you can put these green spots where you want the mask to be and the red spots where you don't want them to be, and it will generate new masks for you. And our platform also allows users to tweak specific parameters to their liking. For example, generation quality, text influence, image influence. These are all machine learning hyperparameters, right? But they have been contextualized into an interpretable format for people, right? And here you can see the results. So if you remember the prompt, it was replace tiger with an alligator. So the left two definitely don't do it, right? The tiger is still there. And this one right here, if you can see it, this one and this one, these are kind of monstrosities, like this two-headed alligator. Like how many teeth is that? Great. This bottom right one is, like a two-headed alligator. If you can see, there's one head here, there's one head there. And this one kind of looks normal, right? It's if you go back a little and you see the original image, it's in a similar shape to this tiger, right? So we'll go with that one. It's our best one. And what we allow our users to do is we can select the best image, and in the future we'll allow them to rank it as well. And we allow people to give feedback for every single model output, right? And this includes allowing them to rate for different parameters like image quality, instruction adherence, original image similarity, and cultural accuracy, right? For assessing these metrics on a functionally or in a different way is really hard. And it's really hard to generate metrics for these, which is why these kind of interactions are very valuable for training models because you can quantify things like these, right? Image quality and instruction adherence kind of are could could work, right? You could find functional approximations for them, but cultural accuracy that really depends on a person, right, or a culture, right? You can't create a machine that does that because no machine. In fact, humans themselves don't understand culture, but we're closer to understanding culture than large language models are, which is why it's really important that we have these kind of metrics so we can quantify and be able to train models to be better. Okay. And so this was one step, and you can always go back and add more steps, right? So you can go and, replace the surrounding jungle with a swamp, do whatnot. So this is an example. And here's some sample results, right? So on the top, here's a multi-step example. Change the churrasco on the grill to paneer to make it relevant to Indian culture. So churrasco is Brazilian and paneer is relevant to Indian culture. So you can see that the models have primarily changed the food on the skewer and not much else, right? It's preserved the overall structure of the image, and it's only added a few additional features. For example, this bucket in the background, some of these vegetables, and stuff like that. And on the bottom, you can here is another example, right? Make the tiger into an alligator to make it relevant to North American culture. And here you can see that there's not as much structural similarity, right? And this is because it's to the translator, it was not exactly logical, right? Notice how the output is like the background is not exactly the same, right? And it's because tigers and alligators live in different places, right? And this is large language model, not large language model, sorry, a diffusion model would really struggle with understanding these nuances. And there's a really big problem here, right? If you can see, this image has some hallucination, right? The skewer that's supposed to be free and you can hold it, eat from it, right? It's attached to the plate, not the plate, sorry, to the table, which makes it really hard to remove stuff from the grill. It's a real fire hazard. But this is the beauty of our platform. You can always go back and fix errors that diffusion models have made, right? So any hallucinations, you can always go and remove it, right? And that's kind of the beautiful part. Any, inconsistencies that diffusion models may be ignoring or not trained to address, you can always address yourself because you are a human and you understand nuances of the image more so than models can, right? So and this reflects in the metrics for our platforms, right? So Highlight has outperformed Google's Imagen 3 and OpenAI DALL-E 3 on structural similarity and cosine similarity of clip embeddings, right? So for structural similarity, it's outperformed OpenAI's DALL-E 3 by 23.54%, and Google's Imagen 3 by 23.54%, and OpenAI's DALL-E 3 by 28.57%. And for cosine similarity of clip embeddings, 2.67% for both of them. And here's a comparison of the outputs so you guys can see the real differences. So the input was cup of matcha with some pastry on the side on a plate on a red mat on some some natural background. And you can see the result, the instruction again. Replace the matcha in the cup with chai, right? Which is which is a way to say Indian tea, right? So what it's done is it's gone and just replaced this black cup with a cup of chai, which is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with this. It's a paper cup, even though it's not in the same format, right? If you go to India, you will probably most likely be served in this kind of paper cup. So that's fine. And Google's Imagen 3, wow, that's beautiful, right? You can see like all this elegant shine, this gloss. Like, look at the seam. That's a lot of detail, right? There's one very important feature, right? There's one very important issue. It looks nothing like the original image, right? Where is the red mat? Where's the soil? Where's where did the spoon come up from? Where did this I forgot the name for this tool. And I should know it. It's some kind of matcha tool. I assume. And OpenAI installing, I don't even want to talk about what is happening here. Like matcha and tea, it's really hallucinating. And where these chopsticks come out of, right? So this is the issue with these models. They don't understand. They're advertised as being capable of image editing, but they're not capable of understanding what is happening in an image, right? Or they're not capable of actually understanding an an instruction for image editing, right? Because you see, it's just adding chopsticks in because it hears matcha and matcha is relevant to Japanese culture. Japanese culture is similar to other Asian cultures, and all these Asian cultures use a lot of these Asian cultures, use chopsticks as their main utensil. So just throw chopsticks in there, or it doesn't matter if the user asks for it. So that's a comparison from that point, and you can kind of see why Highlight has achieved these metrics. And this is a single step output. You can see the input here, and it's changing the duck to a swan, right? And Highlight looks pretty good, right? It's the same image structure, the waves are the same. It just replaces the duck with a swan. And Google's Imagen 3 also performs pretty well. I would say it doesn't perform as badly as OpenAI's DALL-E, which the swan is facing the entirely opposite direction. And again, you can kind of see uh, the metrics of the results demonstrated. And in conclusion, right, various improvements in diffusion models and image editing with access to resource and diffusion models and image editing models will make various improvements with access to resources and global advertising for companies. And this improvement is independent from human in the loop improvements, right? So human in the loop improvements will allow for continued improvements from the data collected from these tasks and interactions, right? And we're hoping that this data collection can be used for training VLMs and also fine-tuning these models using RLHF. So, and here is an acknowledgement of all the mentors and all the colleagues who have been involved in this work. And we've been data collecting for around a year now, and this is kind of a project that's been going, and we hope it continues going on for a long time. Thanks. Any questions?
All right, feel free to pop your questions in the chat. And with that, wrapping up our final presentation, Arya, feel free to answer the questions through the chat as well. Since we're running a little bit short on time, we won't have a live Q&A session. Let me just remove your spotlight, and you can feel free to end your screen share.
Regarding the link for the platform, there is a link. I will find it for you. I have a question. Nora, are you in the OpenNLP Discord server?
I think this is question. Okay.
Yes, thank
Okay,
that.
Suba has
Thank you,
sent.
Sua.
All right. Thank you, Suba.
Yeah, I think that's the platform where people can see responses.
All right. If there's any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as well. Thanks, Arya, for demonstrating the platform.
Oh, I'm still sharing. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. All right. Now let me restart the presentation. Okay, and with that presentation from the Carnegie Mellon team, we'd like to wrap up the symposium with a couple of closing announcements. So first of all, we're looking for more team members, especially in marketing, product management, and operations. So if any of you are interested, we encourage you to apply through the website. And additionally, we'd love to stay in touch with all of you. So please connect with us on our social media channels, including LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and feel free to contact us through our email. So I'll give a brief pause on the screen for y'all to note this down. All right. And finally, thank you all for joining us in this symposium. We realize that we've gone a little bit over time, so sincerely grateful to all of you guys for staying with us to enjoy these wonderful presentations. To all presenters, a hearty congratulations on reaching the end of the winter cohort. You've done a fantastic job at the symposium, and you should all be very proud of your progress. So at this point, you are all free to leave, and we hope to see you again for another session of this event with our next cohort. All right, bye everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Sophia. What a great symposium.
Thank you, Suba.
Bye, everyone.